On March 3, 2023, Amara Jenkins, a 28-year-old graphic designer from Atlanta, believed she was on the verge of a fairy tale. Her laptop screen glowed with the image of a man whose smile seemed to bridge the 7,000 miles between her Buckhead apartment and his purported life of quiet luxury in Dubai. His name was Khalid Al-Jamil, and in less than 3 months, he would arrange a private jet to fly her and her best friend to a secluded airstrip in the United Arab Emirates, a final destination from which neither would return. Amara was not naive. She was sharp, successful, and had built a burgeoning freelance career designing sleek, minimalist branding for tech startups. Her optimism wasn't a product of ignorance, but a deliberate choice. In a world she found increasingly cynical, she chose to believe in possibility, the possibility of love, of adventure, of a life less ordinary. Her best friend and roommate, Simone Williams, 29, was her anchor. A pragmatic financial analyst with a healthy dose of skepticism, Simone viewed Amara's romanticism with affectionate concern. They were a perfect balance. Amara dreamed of painting the world in vibrant color, and Simone ensured the bills were paid in black and white. Their life was a comfortable rhythm of shared takeout, late-night creative sessions, and debates over who left the empty oat milk carton in the fridge. It was a life rich in friendship and ambition, yet Amara felt a persistent, gentle ache for something more. That ache led her to Elysian, a curated, invitation-only dating platform that promised connections with the global elite. It was a whim, a subscription paid for with a bonus from a successful project. She never expected to meet anyone. She certainly never expected to meet Khalid. His profile was understated, yet magnetic. Photos showed him not surrounded by gaudy displays of wealth, but in quiet, thoughtful moments, sketching in a notebook overlooking the Dubai Marina, examining a sculpture in a private gallery, riding a magnificent Arabian horse at dawn. He claimed to be part of a lesser-known branch of a prominent Emirati family, managing their international art investments. His messages were intelligent, his English impeccable, his curiosity about her work genuine. He didn't just compliment her portfolio. He asked about her creative process, her use of negative space, her typography choices. For a woman whose passion was her profession, this was the most potent form of seduction. He actually listens, Amara told Simone one evening, scrolling through their chat history. He remembers the name of my childhood dog. He asked about your stock market predictions. What billionaire does that? Simone peered over her shoulder at the screen. A very clever one, she murmured, though she couldn't deny the man's charm. Khalid had made a point of including her. When he learned she was a fan of a particular Swiss watchmaker, a vintage, hard-to-find model arrived for her by courier a week later. There was no grand romantic pretense. The attached note simply read, "Amara tells me you appreciate fine engineering. As do I." It was a masterful stroke, neutralizing the primary voice of caution in Amara's life. Their conversations moved to video calls. The connection was often unstable, the image slightly pixelated. Khalid would apologize profusely, blaming the terrible signal at his family's desert estate. He was always artfully shadowed, the light catching a handsome jawline or a thoughtful expression, but never revealing his face in perfect clarity. He was an enigma, a collection of compelling, unverifiable details. He spoke of wanting a partner who valued art and intellect over titles and money, a woman who could be his equal in a world that often demanded she be an accessory. He was selling Amara the precise dream she was ready to buy. The first red flag, when it appeared, was so small and cleverly disguised as a romantic request that it was almost invisible. Khalid claimed to have purchased a rare antique manuscript from a private seller in the United States. Due to his family's strict financial oversight, he couldn't make the payment directly without triggering a host of questions from his conservative uncle, the family patriarch. He asked if Amara could possibly handle the $7,500 transaction on his behalf. The funds, he assured her, were already on their way to her account from one of his international art house partners, a transfer that would appear as a simple payment for consulting services. "It just feels weird," Simone said, watching Amara check her bank balance. The promised $8,000, his payment plus a little extra for her trouble, had appeared as promised from a corporation in Cyprus. Why can't his global art empire handle a $7,000 transfer? It's not about the money, see. It's about discretion, Amara explained, already forwarding the funds to the account Khalid had provided. His family is old school. They see a purchase like this as frivolous. He's trusting me. It's a big deal, the act of being his confidant, his secret partner in a small act of rebellion, was intoxicating. It bound her closer to him, weaving a thread of complicity into the tapestry of their romance. She was no longer just a woman he was courting. She was his ally. Over the next month, the requests continued, each one slightly larger and more complex than the last. He needed her to receive a package of sensitive documents and forward them to a contact in London. He needed her to set up a new bank account in her name to facilitate a smoother investment flow for his North American acquisitions. Each request was framed as a step toward building their future together, a future where she would co-manage his art portfolio. He painted a picture of a life in Dubai, of a modern partnership that respected both her independence and his heritage. Simone's warnings grew more pointed, but Amara's defenses were now fully engaged. She accused her friend of being jealous, of being unable to accept her happiness. A painful rift began to form between them, an isolating crack that the predator on the other side of the world expertly widened with every message of sympathy and understanding he sent to Amara. The final piece of the trap was the invitation. It was delivered not as a casual suggestion, but as a grand, sweeping romantic gesture. "I can't bear this distance any longer," Khalid wrote. "I want you to see my world. I want my family to meet the brilliant woman I intend to marry. Please, come to Dubai and bring Simone. I want her to see that my intentions are pure, and I want to personally apologize for any worry I have caused her." It was another masterstroke. By inviting Simone, he laundered the entire proposition of its danger. A clandestine solo trip was one thing. A girl's holiday to a luxury destination was another. Simone, wrestling with her own guilt over the tension with Amara, saw it as an opportunity to repair their friendship and, if necessary, to be there if things went wrong. She acquiesced. The bait was taken. Khalid handled everything. Digital confirmations for first-class tickets on Emirates arrived in their inboxes. But he made a last-minute change. "The family has decided we should have more privacy for your arrival," he explained over a crackling call. "I'm sending a private jet. It will be more comfortable, and it will take you directly to our family's private airfield near our estate in Ras Al Khaimah. It's more secluded, more beautiful than Dubai." The final request came 2 days before their departure. It was the largest yet. Khalid told Amara about a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to acquire a piece by a reclusive artist, an investment that would triple in value within a year. He needed to act immediately, but his funds were tied up for another 48 hours. He asked her to wire $85,000, most of her life savings, as a deposit. He promised to repay her, with a hefty profit, the moment she landed. "Consider it our first investment as partners," he typed. "A foundation for our future." Against every logical instinct she possessed, Amara did it. The money represented years of hard work, of skipped vacations and late nights. But in her mind, she wasn't losing her savings. She was investing in a dream. The digital receipt was a ticket to a new life, a life of love, art, and boundless possibility. Simone knew nothing about it. On May 14, 2023, Amara Jenkins and Simone Williams boarded a sleek Gulfstream G650 at a private terminal at Hartsfield-Jackson Atlanta International Airport. They were giddy, their earlier friction melting away in the face of an adventure that felt too cinematic to be real. They toasted with champagne as the jet climbed into the sky, the lights of Atlanta shrinking below them into a constellation of discarded worries. Amara spent the flight talking about the future, about the art gallery she and Khalid would open, about the children they might have. Simone listened, a knot of unease tightening in her stomach, a feeling she couldn't quite name but couldn't shake either. It felt like watching her best friend walk toward a beautiful, shimmering mirage in the desert. The jet landed not at a polished, modern terminal, but on a stark, sun-bleached strip of asphalt carved into the ochre sand. The heat was a physical blow when the door opened. There was no palace in sight, only endless, undulating dunes and a single, waiting vehicle, a black Mercedes-Benz Sprinter van with windows so heavily tinted they looked like solid panels. A lone man in a simple dishdasha and sunglasses stood beside it. He did not smile. He simply took their bags and gestured toward the van's sliding door. "Where's Khalid?" Amara asked, her own smile faltering. "He is waiting for you at the estate," the man said, his voice flat and devoid of any welcome. "It is a short drive." The interior of the van was cold and smelled of industrial cleaner. There were no seats in the back, only a hard bench along each wall. The door slid shut with a heavy, metallic thud that seemed to seal off the outside world. The windows were opaque from the inside. They were plunged into a dim, artificial twilight. As the van began to move, bouncing over an unpaved road, Amara's phone vibrated. A message from Khalid. "Almost there, my love. I cannot wait to hold you." Her anxiety subsided, replaced by a fresh wave of anticipation. Simone's did not. She watched the GPS dot on her own phone. They were not heading toward any of the resort areas or known residential sectors of Ras Al Khaimah. They were driving deeper into the desert, toward a blank spot on the map. After 10 minutes, her phone's signal flickered, then vanished. Amara's did the same. "This doesn't feel right," Simone whispered, her voice tight. "Don't start, see?" Amara pleaded. He said it was secluded. But the word secluded could not account for the growing sense of dread, the oppressive silence from the driver's cabin, the feeling of being cargo rather than guests. Another 20 minutes passed. The van slowed, turned, and the ride became smoother, as if they had entered a paved area. It stopped. The heavy door slid open. They were not in the courtyard of a palace. They were in a concrete garage, the kind used for industrial equipment. The air was thick with the smell of oil and dust. The door to the outside world rumbled shut behind them, plunging them into semi-darkness, lit only by a few bare, caged bulbs overhead. The driver was gone. Two other men stood waiting. They were large and impassive. They did not look like the staff of a royal household. One of them held a tablet. He looked from the screen to Amara, then to Simone. "Amara Jenkins?" he asked. His English was heavily accented. "Yes," Amara said, her voice trembling slightly. "Where is Khalid? What is this?" The man ignored her question. He held up the tablet. It showed a bank statement, Amara's bank statement, with a highlighted wire transfer for $85,000. "The funds have been secured," he said, not to her, but to the other man. The blood drained from Amara's face as a horrifying understanding began to dawn. The romance, the art, the future, it was all scaffolding for this single, brutal transaction. There was no Khalid al-Jamil. There was no palace. There was only this cold, concrete room and the final, devastating truth. "Where is my money?" she demanded, a desperate, hollow defiance in her voice. The man finally looked at her, his expression a mixture of boredom and contempt. "You were paid for your services," he said. He gestured at the first-class flight, the private jet. "Transportation, accommodation. The transaction is complete." "Transaction? What are you talking about?" "We were invited here." Simone stepped forward, her fear eclipsed by a wave of protective fury for her friend. "We're American citizens. You can't just—" She never finished the sentence. The second man moved with a speed that was terrifying in its efficiency. The last thing Amara Jenkins saw was the look of shocked betrayal on her best friend's face. The last thing she felt was the cold, hard reality of the desert floor. The fairy tale was over. 6 days later, Eleanor Vance, a consular officer at the U.S. Consulate General in Dubai, read the email from a frantic mother in Atlanta. Her daughter, Amara Jenkins, and her friend, Simone Williams, had flown to the UAE to meet a man and had not been heard from since their plane landed on May 15th. Vance felt a familiar, sickening drop in her stomach. It was the third case of a romance scam, with a tragic ending she'd seen that year. The investigation began as a missing persons case, a collaboration between the U.S. Diplomatic Security Service and the Dubai Police Force. Detective Hassan Al-Mansouri, a veteran of Dubai's cybercrime unit, was assigned the case. He was a quiet, meticulous man who understood that the digital ghosts left by criminals were often more real than the phantom identities they created. The name Khalid al-Jamil yielded nothing. No such person existed in any official records of the UAE's ruling families. The Elysian dating profile had been deleted, but investigators worked with the platform's security team to recover the data. The IP addresses used to access the account were a tangled web, bouncing between servers in Eastern Europe, Southeast Asia, and Nigeria. The profile picture was a stock image, expertly altered. The voice on the calls was generated by sophisticated AI software, cloned from interviews of a minor Emirati royal who had no knowledge of the scheme. The financial trail was the key. Detective Al-Mansouri's team traced the $85,000 wire transfer. It had not gone to an art dealer. It had been routed through a series of shell corporations in Cyprus, the Cayman Islands, and finally, to a bank in Sharjah, an emirate neighboring Dubai. The account was emptied within hours of the deposit. They were chasing shadows, but the shadows were getting closer. The breakthrough came from the jet's tail number. The Gulfstream was not owned by a private family. It was a charter leased from a company based in Malta. By cross-referencing the flight plan with satellite imagery and cell tower data, Al-Mansouri's team isolated a probable landing zone, a decommissioned private airstrip in a desolate stretch of Ras Al Khaimah. The area was known to be used by smugglers. On June 2nd, a joint task force of UAE police and security services raided a fortified compound less than 5 kilometers from the airstrip. It was a place built to be invisible, surrounded by high walls and surveillance cameras. The compound was deserted, but the men who had used it were careless. They had tried to bleach the garage floor, but forensic teams found microscopic traces of blood. DNA analysis confirmed they belonged to Simone Williams. 2 days later, acting on a tip from a local informant, police found 2 shallow graves in the desert, marked only by disturbed sand. The bodies of Amara Jenkins and Simone Williams were recovered. The official cause of death was blunt force trauma. They had been killed within an hour of their arrival. The investigation revealed the horrifying scope of the operation. This was not the work of a single scammer, but a transnational criminal syndicate specializing in high-yield romance fraud and human trafficking. They targeted intelligent, successful women with significant assets, grooming them for months before luring them to a location where they could be extorted, robbed, and eliminated. The man Amara fell in love with was a fiction, a committee-designed phantom built to exploit her deepest desires. The gifts, the charm, the shared dreams, it was all a meticulously scripted play, and she and Simone had been cast in the final, tragic act. Several low-level members of the network were arrested in the raid and subsequent operations, but the masterminds, the architects of the scam, remained elusive, their digital footprints dissolving back into the dark corners of the internet. For the families of Amara Jenkins and Simone Williams, there was no cathartic courtroom victory, only the devastating weight of loss and the torment of unanswered questions. Amara's mother, in a later interview, clutched a framed photo of her daughter, a vibrant young woman with a hopeful smile. They didn't just steal her money, she said, her voice thick with grief. They stole her belief in the good of people. They found the most beautiful, trusting part of her, and they used it to kill her. The story of Amara and Simone serves as a brutal, cautionary tale. It's a story about the terrifying intersection of technology, psychology, and organized crime. Their killer wasn't just a man, but an algorithm of deception, a finely tuned system designed to prey on the universal human need for connection. The illusion was perfect, the trap was flawless, and for 2 women who flew across the world in search of a dream, the reality was a grave in the sand.